This morning, what we're going to do is we're going to have, I'm going to teach from Matthew 8, continuing on in our Matthew series, and we're going to have two kind of moments of table time where we're just going to have a little bit of opportunity to engage, to think small, and to engage with one another. And the first one's going to be right at the start here. I'm going to read the passage, and I'm actually just going to invite you guys for 5 minutes. There'll be a timer up on the screen in a moment to just chat around your table and just really just say, what pops out to me about this passage from kind of like a teaching perspective. I think it actually puts us at a really advantaged spot to actually be thinking through the text together and discuss some initial thoughts, and then from there we'll hop into the teaching. So I'm going to read it to you. If you can follow along if you want, it's on the screen. There's some Bibles on your table, and then we invite you to just, with one another, to chat and say, hey, what pops out to me about this passage? What do I find interesting? What questions do I have? So it says in Matthew 8:18, it says, when Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus replied, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. But Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. Anyways, I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes now. Just take a few minutes to just chat around your table, what sticks out to you, and then we'll hop into the text together. Thanks so much for engaging this way. I would actually love if there are a couple people that would bravely share. We've got my lovely assistant over here with a microphone. Just a couple people who'd share something interesting that came up at their table. Yes, no, I am talking about Catlin. So I'd love, maybe it's something you said, maybe you want to take credit for something else someone else said, but maybe just throw up a hand. Catlin will run over to you. I'd love for you to share with us something interesting that popped up at your table. So who's brave? Right? Wow, perfect. Other side of the room, run, Catlin, run. Someone in the middle's got to throw up their hand and intercept. Love to hear. We'll get this and maybe one or two more.
So we're advanced. We actually learned each other's names. So we did that.
Amazing.
Because half of us didn't know each other. And then we had some very deep conversation in 5 minutes, which was kind of surprising. One of the things we talked about was during COVID times how so many people didn't get to say goodbye in the way that they're used to and how hard that was. And then we talked about, whether looking at the idea that Jesus is basically saying, I'm family now, come with me, right? And then we talked about what it meant to be spiritually dead. So all that in 5 minutes. Thank you, table.
Wow. Yeah, well done. Yeah, let's do it for that. That's really interesting, that COVID thing. I would have never thought of that on my own. And just for the record, we had a little bit of trouble with the timer, so you actually got 6.5 minutes in bonus time. So that's what put it over the edge, maybe. Maybe one or two more people who would be willing to share. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very interesting. Right here in the middle. Boom. Thank you. You guys are pioneers.
We also learned each other's names. It's very exciting. We were talking a little bit about the verse that says, don't bury your father, go on. And that was challenging, so then we looked at it in different translations. And the NLT says, let the spiritually dead bury their dead. And then the Message says, doesn't even talk about the dead directly. He just says, first things first, your business is life, not death. Follow me, pursue life. And that kind of gave us a different insight into that passage.
Some of you guys are doing more work around your table in 5 minutes that I didn't do preparing for this sermon. It's almost embarrassing.
Oh, so good.
It's really good. It's great. I'm just going to quickly rewrite this thing while we hear from one more person. One more person. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really interesting. Love that cross-referencing. One more. Come on. Oh, yeah, over here. Thank you so much. I saw another hand. Sorry, we'll get you next week.
Yeah, we also hung out around that, let the dead bury their own dead. And we started wondering, what is the cultural significance of that? So what does a funeral back then look like? Was it very, it would have been spiritual, but what did that look like? So what is Jesus trying to say there? We were just wondering if he's maybe saying, similar to what was shared over there, do we want to focus on the living, on what is happening right here? It's going to be a hard challenge to follow Jesus. So is he trying to just say, look, if you're going to worry about the stuff we can't fix or we can't focus on, it's a different focus anyways. Instead, we should be focusing on who we can save and who we can work with right now.
That's great. Yeah, that letting go is really tough. Thank you so much, Cal. And thank you for sharing, everybody. letting go of things is, that's tough. Thank you for sharing that. That's really great. What I want to do this morning is I want to teach the passage a little bit, and through that, I want us to ask ourselves collectively 2 questions that I think the passage will lead us to. And then we're going to have one more table time at the end, and that table time is going to be actually just 5 minutes right at the end of the teaching to just maybe camp on like, okay, so what does that mean for me now? I've been part of churches for 38 years because that's how old I am, unfortunately, now. But it's so easy to like be in a setting where you like hear something from Scripture, or you hear something, experience something, and then 2 minutes later you're in the lobby arguing about the Battle of Alberta, or if you're Team Johnny or Team Amber, the really important things of life, right? And that stuff's all fine, but it's so easy to just like leave and not. And so I actually want to create a bit of space. It's going to require even a little bit more vulnerability. Good thing some people learned each other's names because now you're BFFs. But to actually like say, is this passage saying something to me, or is there something this morning that God's like actually putting on my heart, and actually to name that and maybe share it with each other. So we'll do that at the end. Before that, right at the start here, I want to make a declarative statement that I think Scripture teaches, I think Jesus teaches quite regularly, but I think is so often missed in our modern church context. And this declarative statement goes like this: following Jesus is difficult. Following Jesus is extraordinarily difficult. It is hard. It is challenging. I would say to follow Jesus truly is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult things someone can choose to do with their life. Now, I think it's the best thing someone can do, but I think it's very difficult. And I think we've totally lost that idea. And Jesus teaches it regularly. Like in this passage, what do we see? Jesus is like, he's not soft selling it. We have whole church movements over the past several decades in North America where we've gone so attractional and we've become what we call seeker sensitive. And what we've essentially done is kind of been like, how can we kind of change our messaging? How can we change what we would naturally do? How can we, this sounds maybe harsh, but how can we kind of like have a really big fine print that we like don't mention that to people on the way in, and we try to like soft sell the gospel. And I think we've created 2 really massive problems in the modern church. I think we've damaged our own theology, and we've really misled people on the outside of the church. We've made it so that following Jesus is really easy. It's this benefit that you can add to your life. It's just like, oh, you follow Jesus, it'll be so good. Got like whole movements, like the prosperity gospel movement. It's like, follow Jesus, you can be like rich and healthy and all this and fly first class every time, and I wish. But, it's just like, we have movements like that in whole church, and we've had decades of church where it's been about like, how do we get people in? And we've, I think, really misled ourselves, and we don't really talk about that. And I think we need to. I think it's so important that we actually say what's true. Jesus is so weird here, right? Like, what's he doing? Is he like trying to like, oh, come on, get in here? If anything, it seems like he's trying to turn people away. Darren told me a couple weeks ago, there's this girl that came to young adults. She's like brand new to church. She's like never experienced it. It's all new to her. And they're sitting down talking. And the conversation he had with her is he said, I want you to know something. Following Jesus is really hard. It's really difficult. And I think we need to start believing that, and I think we need to start telling people that. I think we need to start offering people truth on the way in and say, this is a hard thing to do. Because what we win people with is what we win them to. And if it's a shallow, really easy, fits your own model of life type of Jesus following, then that's where people stay. And it's really unfortunate. There's this bishop, an Anglican bishop named J.C. Ryle, if you've never heard of him, who lived in the 1800s. And he says it this way. This is a great quote. He says, nothing, in fact, has done more harm to Christianity than the practice of filling the ranks of Christ's army with every volunteer who is willing to make a little profession and talk fluently of his experience. It has been painfully forgotten that numbers alone do not make strength, and that there may be a great quantity of mere outward religion, while there is very little real grace. Let us all remember this. Let us keep back nothing from young professors and inquirers after Christ. Let us not enlist them on false pretenses. Now check this out. I love this. Let us tell them plainly that there is a crown of glory at the end. That's what we're good at as a modern church. We're good at like the eternal hope. That's so true. But let us tell them no less plainly that there is a daily cross in the way. Let us tell people no less plainly that it is a challenge. Jesus says, take up your cross. Jesus is all, in this passage, he's doing the opposite thing of the seeker-friendly movement. He's doing the opposite thing of an attractional model. And he's like, if anything, at the door, he's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure I'm going to give you this is like what premarital counseling is about, right? It's to try to like expose all the challenges. Like, are you sure you want to get in on this mess? And she still said yes. It was crazy. I don't know why. In like a moment of weakness, almost 12 years ago, wild. But you let people know this is what's challenging if you actually care about people. And it's not only about people on the outside, but it's for us, because as we continue to preach that, we start to believe that. And we fall into this model of Christianity that is all about, how do I fit Jesus into my life? How does Jesus become my friend? How is Jesus a friend of mine? And it makes me happy and healthy and all this. And really, Jesus says, come on, lay down your life so that you can find real life. Check this out. We're going to see this in two instances here, and you can read about this in Luke 9. Awkwardly, I preached on the Luke 9 passage a year and a half ago here, so I feel kind of weird about this. So hopefully you just forget it, so it doesn't seem like I'm just kind of saying the same thing. But Matthew 8:18, when Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Already, that's really weird. Like nowadays, we see a crowd at a church. What do? Oh, building campaign. Got to build a big building. New programs, we gotta get them in. Because we're so numbers driven. It's just like, oh, we're succeeding because people came and they're convinced to be in Club Jesus and stuff. And Jesus is looking for quality, not quantity. And Jesus often withdraws from the crowd, I think, to see who will actually follow, who will make that painful journey across the lake, and who's actually going to be in it for the real thing rather than be in it for the crowd. Why is there a crowd? Why is there a crowd? Well, what's just happened? 3 miracles. Jesus is driving out demons. He's healing people. Who wouldn't? I mean, it's amazing. That's like if someone shows up and they're like free cannoli in the parking lot, right? I actually don't know if it's free or not. I didn't know, but anyways, it's like, don't quote me on that. Bring money just in case. I don't know. If you don't have money, Catlin will pay for you, okay? But it's just like, this is exciting. There's this teacher who's he's teaching like no one else. It's like so exciting. People are flocking around, and Jesus says, let's go. Let's see who's really in this thing. Let's withdraw to the other side of the lake. That's so weird. That's really different. He's such a weird, not normal teacher. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. That sounds great. Sounds awesome. That's like that's the profession we need. This we use the NIV here, teacher of the law, and it's actually better translated scribe. And to give a little bit of context, because we know Jesus is basically going to challenge this guy and kind of see right through what he's saying. The guy says, I'll follow you wherever you go. And Jesus is basically saying, yeah, right, I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to show you what it actually takes and see if you stand the test. And notice that Jesus doesn't go run. Matthew 19, we're going to get there. Jesus doesn't go running after people. We sing songs like, oh, you leave the 99 for the one. And that's true, but Jesus isn't like arguing people, oh, please come to my church. Please, you got to come. He says, this is what's on offer, the gospel, and he lets people choose and he lets people reject. We got to be comfortable with that. Following Jesus is hard. So he says, I'll follow you wherever you go. Teacher of the law is better translated scribe. So what a scribe is, that's that's like a church leader, like in the early Jewish church. And it's actually a position of decent, power, prestige. It's a decent position. He's like maybe like lower white collar, like he's reputable, he's probably doing okay, living a comfortable life. And here's what I imagine, and this is maybe a little bit of conjecture, so take this lightly. He's looking at Jesus, and this is an explosive movement. People are flocking, thousands of people. And he's like healing people, crazy stuff's happening. And he's looking at this like, here's this like early startup, and I think this is going somewhere. This is like those really smart people who thought this about Bitcoin in 2016, right? Or who bought GameStop at like 20 cents, right? Hashtag Wall Street bets. These people who are just laughing. This guy, he's seen this. He's like, this is going somewhere. This is a really interesting rabbi. I've got a decent job. And what does he look at? Jesus' squad. What's Jesus' squad? Some young fishermen, uneducated people, some kind of like pseudo-terrorist, a tax collector. And I would imagine he's like, have you ever done this? Okay, this is an honest confession. This probably isn't great. We're about to have our first kid. I was pretty freaked out. Can we do this? Maybe I should use it. Anyways, I'm just going to be really honest. I opted to look at this. Just if you need to forget this in order to listen to it. I opted to look at other parents who are raising kids and succeeding and being like, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it. And that sounds terrible. I think we do that. You're at work. There's a promotion coming up. What do? You look around. Well, who else could? No, I think I got this. A scribe? A Jewish scribe looking at a bunch of fishermen who didn't have a rabbi they could follow before Jesus. This is it. He's in. He's in on the startup before it's about to blow up, and he's probably thinking, I can be high in the ranks of this. I can add something that's going to get me power and prestige and position. And what does Jesus respond by saying? Jesus says, oh, yeah, man. You're going to be able to, like, here's your 401k. That's an American thing. Here's your RSP plan. Here's all your stuff. And I'm going to, no, Jesus says, listen, I'm homeless. He says, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. What does he say to this guy? Dude, I sleep in ditches sometimes. When it's raining, I'm out on a field, sitting around a fire with people. I'm not camped out at home. The scribe, good chance he has a family. Saying, dude, you're going to be like a transient vagabond in my kingdom. The scribe, he's looking at something that he can add to his life. He's looking at Jesus as something that he can add to his life to make his life better. And Jesus says, hey, actually, I'm inviting you to lose your life so that you can find true life. I'm actually asking you to delete all these notions that you have, and we have so many things in life that draw us in and that we want the normal things of this world. And the first question I'd love for us to ask ourselves this morning, whether you talk about it at table time or not, is what deters me from following Jesus? This guy, I mean, he's on a track to the top. He's doing well. Life is good. The things, and not even just in like some malicious way. Like in modern day context, he's maybe a pastor of a church he's like the community group's pastor at a church that's like doing pretty well. He's responsible for handling the law. Things are going well. Things are good. People are looking at him. They're like, oh, your family's good. This is comfortable. You got a decent house. All this stuff. You're planning for the future. And Jesus says, forget that stuff. What deters me from following Jesus? A lot of times, sometimes it's not noble stuff, but it can be some of the most noble stuff. We pick things like career goals or retirement or that, and we're like, these things are so important to us. And Jesus says, until you can forget all of that and say that I am happy to lose all of that, until you can hold it loosely in the palm of your hand and say, even if I lose every single thing in life, even if everybody hates me, even if I lose it all, even if I lose everything. Later on, he's even going to say your family. Even if you lose your family, you're not fit for the kingdom of heaven. You're not fit for the kingdom of Jesus. Those who want to follow Jesus. Jesus says, dude, you want to live, you want to upgrade your life? I'm going to invite you into life where you might live lower than the birds. You might live lower than the fox. And the guy's like, I don't even know what foxes say. Sorry, that's stupid. That was worse than my story about comparing myself to other parents. He says, man, we do this all the time. And we do it with some of the most noble things. This guy is finding something really noble in his culture. What's the parallel? Here's one of the things I've been thinking about. I've been working at churches for quite a while, and I'm no professional. But what I've observed is it's quite normal for parents to say, well, I don't want to force faith on my kids. I don't want them to hate the church because I'm forcing my values. However, those same kids come home and say, I don't feel like doing homework. And it's like, no, you do your homework. This is important. You have to do it. It's a value. I don't feel like vacuuming. I don't feel like emptying the dishwasher. What we've taught our kids, what we're teaching the next generation is that the values of the world, academic success, extracurricular success, doing well in sports, keeping a clean room is something that as parents we would enforce and challenge and drive, yet we would never have hard conversations with them about picking up this Bible and saying, hey, listen, we actually are asking you as part of our household to actually engage with the voice of God. We would never, we don't want to force them to go to youth. They might hate the church. They hate vacuuming, and you still make them do it. It's just like, we're going insane, and a lot of it, I think, is just a justification because we don't want to be held to these high-level standards that we hold our kids to. And what our kids buy into is this myth that having a 95 and 96% average in school and getting into a certain university and going somewhere is somehow more noble and important than reading Scripture and engaging with God, and we're misleading our kids. All in the name of, I wouldn't want to force them to go to a church or a youth program or to make it a value that people in our house actually hear the voice of God. And even now, you might disagree with me on that, but as parents, it's our job to parent and to teach values. And we are teaching our kids to be deterred just like this teacher of the law for these noble reasons of academic and success in the world. And we model that. When we set our career, we don't have time to read Scripture. We don't have time to pray. We don't have time to go to church. We don't have time to engage around the things of God because our career goals and our retirement planning and our vacation planning and all these things seem to be so much more important. And even the most noble things. So often it's just like, I just need more family time. I just want to be a good husband. I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good mom. You want to be a good at anything. Jesus says, come and forget all those values and forget all those goals and come and follow me, and I will make you the true disciple who will flourish and thrive in those more than you ever could in and of your own strength. You think you can make yourself a good dad? Let me show you what the Father of the universe is, how loving he is, how he lays down his life for others so that you can learn how to do that for your family. I could just I have 15 minutes. I could talk about the rest right here because we are just so misled that we can put some of these normal values of the world here. And I would say, what deters us from following Jesus? Oh man, I could go through a long list in my life, things that seem good, things that seem positive to me. But there's another dude that we need to talk about. Another disciple said to him, notice that, disciple, that's interesting. We often think of disciples and there are 12. They're actually like lots of disciples, and there are these layers. That's actually a good picture of the church, I think, nowadays. We need to remember that it's not like, oh, they're the disciples and they're the Pharisees. It's like you're either perfect or you're out. There are layers. Like I talked about this in the Sermon on the Mount. They're probably the people who are really leaning in, the people not quite sure, the people, in different rows and stuff like that. And there's this disciple. This is someone who's been following Jesus, someone who's been seeing the miracles, someone who's been hearing the teachings, and they're interested. But he says, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. That's legit. I mean, that's a trump card, right? No matter any of us in this room, we're talking to someone about something, we have an expectation, like I got a funeral today, that's it, right? We're done. I remember in junior high, yo mama jokes, remember, people remember those? I think those are way less appropriate now. Well, they weren't appropriate then, but we just know about it now. It'd be like, yo mama's just kidding, your mom is wonderful and Jesus loves her. But we'd have these yo mama jokes, and inevitably someone would say one to someone, and the person would be like, actually, my mom died, and it would just kill the whole vibe. This is trump card stuff. This is how insensitive is Jesus? Jesus told him, what a jerk Jesus is. Follow me. Let the dead bury their own dead. I imagine I'm this guy, and I'm like, Jesus, I don't know the last time you were at a burial, but that's pretty tricky, actually, for dead people to dig graves and to put people in graves. I don't know if you know this. I imagine us often in life being like, Jesus, I don't know if you know how life actually works. And Jesus being like, no, I actually have a pretty good idea. I love some of the observations that were made. Most scholars would agree that this guy's dad probably actually isn't dead yet. That what this guy's actually saying is, hey, let me go take care of my dad in his old age. Culturally so important to go take care of your parents in old age, finish out their life with them, make sure they're taken care of, feed them, change their diapers, all the great stuff of your parents aging out, and then eventually make the funeral arrangements so you're not a deadbeat that leaves other people with that responsibility. You would be seen as a terrible son, a deadbeat. You'd be seen as just a terrible person if you just shirk that responsibility culturally. This guy's dad's probably alive. What he's saying is, Jesus, I want to follow you. We do this all the time. Jesus, I want to follow you, but first. Jesus, I'd love to be generous, but first, my student loans. But first, I need a raise. As though we think that if we have more, we'll suddenly be more generous than when we had less, which is one of the biggest myths. Jesus, I'd love to read scripture more. But first, can I wait till my 3-year-old's 20 so that it's easier? Legit. Oh, Jesus, I wish I had time and space to pray. Okay, great. Well, let's shut down all the social activities in life for 2 years and see if that happens. Didn't happen. Jesus, I'd love to follow you, but first. We've got a lot of terrible but firsts. This guy's actually hitting on a really good but first. And I think Matthew's intentionally Matthew's not setting up big enemies who are like, Jesus, I want to follow you except I'm a murderer. It's pretty obvious. We're all like, yeah, we're not murderers. Well, I hope we're not murderers. He's setting up someone who's doing one of the most culturally, if he doesn't do this, people will despise him. And Jesus says, let go of your right to be valued and find your identity in a culture that wants to value you in these really normal things. Come find me. There's this great quote by Spurgeon. He says, much of the concerns of politics, party tactics, committee meetings, social reforms, innocent amusements, and so forth may be very fitly described as burying the dead. Much of this is very needful, proper, and commendable work. It's good stuff. But still, only such a form of business as unregenerate men can do as well as disciples of Jesus. Spurgeon says, let them do it. But if we are called to preach the gospel, let us give ourselves wholly to our sacred calling. Our reasons can be so good. The second question I want us to ask ourselves is, what delays me from following Jesus? I really want to do the preacher alliteration thing there. I don't know if what delays me is actually grammatically correct, so I apologize for those out there who really care about grammar like I do. I would be like really judging me right now. But I'd love for us to ask ourselves, what deters me from following Jesus? What delays me from following Jesus? What are my but firsts? Oh, Jesus, I'd love to engage with you more, but first, I'd love to serve at church, but I've got a lot going on. Let me work that out. If going and taking care of your dad in his old age and making all the funeral arrangements and doing those things that culture would applaud as some of the most noble work isn't a good reason to slow down and delay following Jesus, then I would assume most of our vocational ventures, most of the sports, most of the extracurriculars, most of the 900,000 hours of Netflix we binge, most of the endless, mindless scrolling that I myself am guilty of on social media, much of the social things we do, many of the relational things that seem very great and very appropriate for a community of Jesus, that come first and be a priority, can actually be what deters and delays us. We see this a lot in church movements. Churches start out with a value like social justice, or this is what happened with purity culture. Purity culture, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go Google it. But it starts out as a movement that is about Jesus and about the Bible, and it picks a value that is biblical, but it becomes the focus rather than just simply the gospel. And then over time it becomes the focus as though a societal or a cultural, even a biblical value is enough reason to be distracted. Jesus is ripping on a biblical value here. Honor your mother and father. I mean, that's one of the big 10, right? That's in the Decalogue in Exodus 20. He said that. I mean, imagine this guy. He's like, Jesus, what are you saying to me, you know? He's just saying, you're distracted. Most of us know so many things and spend so much time on so many things, but we live in a culture where the vast majority of us haven't even taken the 15 minutes a day it would take in a year to just say, God, I want to hear what you're about. Most of us don't take the few minutes it would take a day to just start our day and say, Jesus, how can I serve you today? How can I prioritize following you over all of the things I pursue and run after? Jesus calls these guys to some pretty crazy things. And I think following Jesus is very hard, and Jesus calls us to crazy things. Really crazy things. Like this, hey, please go from being a scribe to potentially just being a homeless dude. He talks to his disciples. He's like, you might have to die for this. Blessed are those who are persecuted. It's crazy. And I would actually suggest that if we don't live with a mentality that embraces the fact that following Jesus is very difficult and that we are actually required to do crazy, abnormal things in life, like I mean wild things in life, to follow Jesus, then we probably aren't understanding the call that Jesus actually places on our life. I want to actually share a story because I think stories are powerful. I want to share a story about one of the most inspiring people I've ever met and something crazy that they did for Jesus. Because we can talk about biblical characters, right? But it's so up in the sky, right? We can talk about that. And actually, before I do that, before I share a story, I want to rip on something for a second. And I'm going to say that clearly so that when I do it, you know, if you've been around for a while, you know that I like to take some of these Christianese statements that we've developed as like biblical theology over time and debunk them. And I want to do this very lovingly and gently. I just said rip, lovingly and gently. Because some of you might have said this in the past week or month, and I want to lovingly challenge this. There's a statement that gets said a lot when it comes to decision making. Hey, would you think about serving in Kids Town? Or are you thinking about doing this with your life? Or what about this job? Or anything, whatever it is. And there's a statement that's like, I prayed about it and I just don't feel peace about it. That sounds really good. And Jesus is the Prince of Peace, right? Sounds great. Every account of one of the biblical characters, like a prophet who is called, feels no peace about what they're being. You think Jonah felt peace? hey, go to Nineveh, they're your biggest enemies. He doesn't even say no. He didn't pray and be like, oh, do I feel? He left. He gets thrown in the belly of a giant fish, and he wasn't like, oh, I really feel at peace about this guy. And he's like, my life is in complete turmoil, and I feel like I'm about to die, so I need to go and follow God, even though everything in me doesn't want to. As someone who comes into this world inclined towards sinfulness, my year and a half daughter, she hardly knows she can hardly do anything. If we leave for an hour, she might die in and of herself. She already knows how to bite me when she's not getting what she likes because she's born with the sinful nature. It goes against every grain and every stitch of what we come into this world to follow Jesus. We aren't going to pray and magically feel at peace about everything Jesus calls us to. Oh, I should be more generous. Oh, yeah, I really feel at peace about that. I actually hate money and the luxuries. No, that doesn't happen. Moses, he didn't feel at peace about it. None of these people. And these two examples here, it wasn't like, oh, I really feel. They felt at peace about saying no, and so they said no. Jesus calls us to do crazy things. If you said that this past week, I love you. I'm just trying to, this is, I think, what I got hired for. Anyways, I'll tell you a story. One of the most inspiring people I know. There's this girl I know, and she was dating this guy, and they were planning on getting married. And so they got engaged, and it was right before, she had changed her life. She had dropped out of university, go to Bible college, radical transformation, all that. Anyway, she decided to go on a YWAM trip, Youth with a Mission. You guys know it, it's like a missions organization. She went on this. And the first few months is like DTS, Discipleship Training School. While she's there, her and her fiance, they'd just been engaged, like right before she left. She started to just realize, she's like, I think my fiance is like an idol in my life. It's good. Christian couple, they love Jesus, they love each other, things are good. People would say, this is good. And she's like, I'm dependent on him for my value and identity, and if Jesus said, give him up, it would be, in the same way he says, like, foxes don't have, it would be really difficult. So she hit up her fiance and said, I actually feel like I need to fast from you for the rest of my DTS, or the rest of my YWAM thing. She's like, so for the next 4 months, I'm going to be in Africa having this amazing experience in Kenya and Uganda, and we're just not going to talk. 4 months. It's a long time. And she decided to do that. Was there anything like inherently wrong with the relationship? No, I think most people would say no. Did they love Jesus? Yeah. Were they making good choices? Yeah. But she realized there might be something that's delaying me and deterring me from going all in on just laying everything down for Jesus and that difficult. And so she did something insane. She did something crazy for Jesus. I have lots more stories like that. I think about the young adult boy I know who's struggling with porn a lot, enough that he decided to share with his faith community and say, I'm really struggling with this. And enough that he decided, get this is insane, to get rid of his smartphone and switch to a flip phone. And yes, he still is able to survive. It's wild. And switch to a flip phone. He's like, because Jesus said, chop off my right hand if it is causing me to stumble. Let's face it, our iPhones are our right hands. Sorry, I know there's some Android users in this room. I don't want to make you feel disparaged, but you should be. No, just kidding. Think about that. I think about some of the teenagers I've met before who play sports and extracurriculars. It's good. It's really healthy. It's physically healthy. It's emotionally healthy. It's a great experience. It helps them build character and all that. But they realize, because of this, I actually am able to participate in youth less. It takes me away from small group, less time for my spiritual rhythms. I can't serve at church as much. So they quit sports in junior high and high school. And I talked to their parents. They were for sure headed to the Chell, so, that's a big sacrifice. But they gave that up for that. I think about a couple of the people that I know at Town and Field Church who give up to close to 20% of their annual income in order to invest in the work of the local church so that the mission of Town and Field Church of joining God and restoring all things, the gospel can be fulfilled. That's insane. 15 to 20% of your money, our money. That's wild. I think about people, my friend who just deleted his social media apps because he's like, it's too distracting and I just don't have the bandwidth for my family and for Jesus. I think about a lot of these stories. We can read about Moses and we're like, that story's way up there. But there are people all around us who make these choices that are kind of insane for Jesus. They're really nuts decisions. I want to share some of those with you because I think we have to adopt this mentality that, two things. We can be part of a social club called church. We can do that. That's fine. You can do that. Or else you can say, you know what, I want to look at what Jesus is actually teaching here and realize that I should leave an undeterred, an undelayed, an undistracted life to follow the King of Kings who had laid down everything for me. It's not weird that Jesus calls us to complete sacrifice and abandon, and to do crazy things, because that's exactly what he did for us. He's not the type of leader that asks his followers to do something he's not willing to do, because that's what he did for us. You know what's crazier than all of those stories? Is that Jesus looked at us, people who start biting our parents at 18 months, people who are selfish and greedy, people who talk trash about each other behind their backs, people who, we get angry at each other over nothing. We fight and we disparage each other, and we do all these things. And he looked at us and he's like, you know, I'll give up the greatest throne in the entire universe to go live amongst and to give my life for these people. That is crazier than anything we could ever do. I left you with a bit of a cliffhanger on that engagement story, because you're like, well, what happened? Don't worry, we got married, so it's all good. And we get to hear from her next week. She is an inspiring human who has, she's a great example of what it means to actually do crazy things for Jesus, and we get to hear from her next week. You're going to give us 5 minutes around our tables. I would love for you to actually say, Jesus, what is it from this text? Or maybe there's, my words aren't particularly magical, but maybe there's something as we're looking into this that you're like, man, I need to shift something in my thinking. I need to actually embrace this hard call where Jesus invites us into this kingdom that's really difficult and challenging. And I'd invite you, you might not even know some of the people, well, some of you got names, but you might not know the people around your table, but be willing to share it. And if someone shares something real, man, I want to encourage you. This is a great space to think small and say, how can I pray for you? Can I get your number so I can be encouraging you or whatever? And at the end of the 5 minutes, the band's going to come lead us in a time of singing again. I'm so glad that you guys could be here on this Sunday where we get to try this. I'm so grateful to be part of a church who's willing to try some weird things and try some new things to figure out what it means for us as a community to continue taking this call to follow Jesus in an undeterred and undelayed way. So I'll turn it over to you guys, take some time to discuss, and then we'll sing together.